If they want you back, if it feels like no matter how much time passes, no matter how much distance comes between you, something still keeps pulling their attention back to you, if there's this quiet, unshakable feeling inside you that says, they are not done thinking about me, then you need to understand something very important. This is not random. This is not just coincidence. And this is not something happening outside of you in the way most people assume. The real reason they cannot stop thinking about you has very little to do with them and everything to do with you. Now, I want you to really sit with that for a moment, because your first instinct might be to resist it, especially if you are currently in a situation where there is no contact, or things ended badly, or their behavior does not seem to match what you feel inside. Because logically, you might say, if they were thinking about me, they would text me, or if they missed me, they would come back. But Neville Goddard's teaching was never about reacting to visible circumstances as if they are the final truth. He taught something much deeper. He taught that your outer world is a reflection of your inner assumptions, which means that what you consistently believe, feel, and identify as true begins to shape how you experience reality itself. So when you feel like they cannot stop thinking about you, what you're actually experiencing is not a direct window into their mind, but a projection of your own internal state, your own assumptions, and your own self-concept showing up in a way that feels external. And this is where most people misunderstand the law of assumption completely, because they immediately jump to the idea of control. They start thinking, if I affirm enough, I can make them obsessed with me. Or if I visualize correctly, I can force them to think about me all day. That approach is not only exhausting, it is also rooted in fear and lack, because it assumes that something outside of you needs to be manipulated in order for you to feel secure. But Neville never taught manipulation. He taught identity. He taught that instead of trying to change another person, you change the version of yourself that you are being, because that version of you automatically experiences a different kind of reality. So the question is not, how do I make them think about me? The question is, who am I being that makes it feel natural that they do? Because there is a huge difference between hoping someone is thinking about you and knowing that you are unforgettable. And that difference is created entirely within you. Now let's break this down in a way that actually makes sense in your real life. Right now, if you are constantly thinking about them, checking your phone, replaying memories, analyzing their behavior, and trying to figure out what they are feeling, then what is happening is your mind is highly focused on them. And naturally, it starts creating the assumption that the connection must be mutual. This often creates the illusion that they cannot stop thinking about you, when in reality, it is your own attention that is amplified, not necessarily theirs. And this is why you feel anxious, restless, and emotionally dependent on what they do next. But there is another state, and this is the one Neville actually points toward. It is the state where you are no longer obsessing over them, but instead you are grounded in a new identity, where you see yourself as someone who is deeply valued, naturally remembered, and emotionally impactful in people's lives. In that state, you do not need constant reassurance. You do not look for signs, and you do not feel the urge to chase or control anything, because your belief about yourself is already stable. And from that place, the thought, they cannot stop thinking about me, does not feel like a question anymore. It feels like a quiet, obvious truth that does not need to be proven. This is what Neville meant by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And most people completely miss this because they turn it into a technique instead of understanding it as a state of being. It is not about repeating affirmations all day while feeling anxious underneath. It is not about visualizing a specific text message over and over until you feel drained. It is about becoming the version of you for whom the desired reality already feels natural, normal, and expected. And when you truly shift into that version of yourself, something very important changes. Your inner conversations change. Instead of thinking, why are they ignoring me? Or, what did I do wrong? You naturally begin to think in a way that reflects your new identity. You start thinking, I am someone who is valued. I leave a lasting impression. People remember me. And these are not forced thoughts. They feel like your baseline. Now here is where things get even more interesting. And this is something you need to understand clearly so you do not fall into false expectations. You do not actually have access to their mind. You cannot hear their thoughts. You cannot confirm what they are thinking unless they express it directly. So when you say, they cannot stop thinking about me, what you are really doing is selecting an assumption about reality. And that assumption will either come from fear or from confidence. If it comes from fear, it will feel unstable, obsessive, and dependent on external validation. If it comes from confidence, it will feel calm, grounded, and self-sufficient. And this distinction is everything, because one keeps you stuck and the other sets you free. This is why Neville emphasized self-concept so strongly, even though many people ignore this part and focus only on changing others. Your self-concept is the foundation of every experience you have in relationships, because it defines what you believe you deserve, how you interpret other people's behavior, and what kind of outcomes feel natural to you. If deep down you believe that you are easy to forget, that people lose interest in you, or that you are always the one who gets left behind, then even if someone does think about you, even if they miss you, even if they consider coming back, you will struggle to believe it. You will doubt it. You will question it. You will look for evidence that contradicts it. And in doing so, you reinforce the very reality you are trying to escape. But when you begin to shift your self-concept, not through force, but through consistent awareness and intentional thinking, you start to experience yourself differently. You begin to see yourself as someone who is chosen, someone who is respected, someone who naturally creates meaningful connections. And from that place, your entire perception changes. You are no longer trying to get them to think about you. You are embodying a version of yourself that is simply hard to forget. Now think about this in a very real, practical way. Have you ever met someone who did not try to impress anyone, who did not seek attention, who did not chase validation, and yet they stayed on your mind long after you interacted with them? That is not because they used a technique on you. It is because of who they were being. Their identity, their presence, their self-concept created an impact that did not require effort. And that is exactly the shift you are making here. You are not learning how to control someone else's thoughts. You are learning how to become someone whose presence naturally lingers. And this is where the title of this video becomes clear. Why can they not stop thinking about you? Because at some level, you are beginning to step into an identity that feels memorable, impactful, and valuable. But this only works when it is genuine. If you are still checking your phone every few minutes, looking for signs, stalking their social media, or trying to decode every small action, then you are still operating from a state of lack. And in that state, even if you tell yourself, they are thinking about me, it will not feel stable. It will feel like you are trying to convince yourself of something you do not fully believe. So instead of focusing on them, bring your attention back to where it actually has power. Your thoughts, your identity, your inner conversations. Start noticing how you speak to yourself about relationships. Start noticing the assumptions you make automatically. And instead of letting fear fill in the blanks, choose beliefs that support a stronger version of you, not to control someone else, but to stabilize yourself. Because the moment you become emotionally stable within yourself, everything changes. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop overanalyzing, you stop chasing, and you start showing up in a way that is calm, grounded, and self-assured. Now, does this guarantee that a specific person will come back? No, and it is important to be honest about that, because real relationships involve two individuals making their own choices. But what this does guarantee is that you will no longer feel powerless in your own life. You will no longer depend on someone else's actions to feel valued. And from that place, you naturally align with healthier, more mutual, and more fulfilling connections. So if right now you feel like they cannot stop thinking about you, do not treat that as something mystical happening outside of you. Treat it as a reflection of something shifting within you, a signal that your assumptions are changing. And then take it one step further. Instead of asking, are they thinking about me? Start living from the identity of someone who is simply unforgettable, and you will notice magic happening around you. I hope this helped you. Subscribe, and I will meet you with another golden nugget soon. Happy manifesting.